Cuba, it's me! Welcome to another episode of The W.I.L.L.I.W Show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now today I'm continuing my series, looking back at some of my favorite matches I've had, and just breaking them down in detail and talking about them, the ones that are near and dear to my heart. So on October 26, 2006, PWA started running Newmarket, Ontario. I believe this was their second show in Newmarket. And what happened was the day before we did a show in Cambridge, and I wrestled Jesse Jones in a Havana street fight, and I was feeling pretty sore, but I perked up knowing who I was going to be sharing the ring with. The next night in Newmarket, I got to team up with the innovator of offense, Chris Kanyon, and we would take on the team of Cutthroat and Sinn Bodhi, the original Sinn, who would also be known as Kizarny in WWE, and they were managed by Gordo the Wizard of Id, and it was a great tag team contest for me. One, Kanyon was always someone I looked up to. When I really got into wrestling and understanding, he always come up with cool moves and different moves, and I loved him, and I loved playing as him on WCW NWO Revenge World Tour on N64. So this was a big deal to me, to meet someone that I'd always looked up to, and I was very scared and nervous and shy and didn't know what to do and really just didn't want to embarrass myself. So I just was quiet. I didn't say anything to anyone. I shook hands with everybody, and Cutthroat and I were already on good terms as we had wrestled a few times in the past. So I just waited, and eventually they said, okay, hey kid, we're going to talk about the match. And I was 24 at this time, but I looked like I was still like 18. So they probably just thought I was this young punk. But Kanyon was actually very nice, and so they were putting together the match, and I didn't have any input. And then they said, "Is there anything you wanted to add?" Because it's not my place to step up and say anything. And Sinn had been around for a long time too, and I just said, "Hey, would it be okay if I did this one move?" And they were all okay with that. And then I said, "Please, Kanyon, you used to do that move where you sat the guy on your shoulders and did a sit out. I'm like, what if you did that?" As to me as your partner onto a guy into like a splash. And he was like, yeah, no, that's fine. He's like, that could be the finish. So it was pretty much everybody knew anyway. Anybody that knows anything with wrestling is that I'd be the small guy, I would be getting beat up, and then I could make the hot tag to Kanyon, who had all his great offensive moves and it could clean the house. So but like going into the match, I had huge butterflies. I did not want to embarrass myself. At this time, Kanyon had, most of us did, had MySpace, and he actually did a blog on it, and I followed it religiously. Like, I would always read his blog, and I'm like, dude, if I screw up, he's going to put me in the blog as how crappy I am. And if I do good, he might put me in the blog and put me over, and that could open a lot of doors up for me. So the match went pretty good, I thought. Like, everyone said it was good. Like, I came in, I did a couple little things, but then Kanyon did a couple little things, and then they took over on me. I tried to make some comebacks. There was a spot where I did like a blockbuster on Cutthroat, went for the tag, but they cut me off. And then Gordo was running some interference and pulling some shenanigans, and then there was a spot in the corner where they were distracting the ref, and they were taking turns beating me up, and Gordo would be like holding my leg. But then I was fighting out of the corner, and my punches were actually looking pretty good, and I fought, and I was like dead, but I just had enough to give Kanyon the tag, and he did all his cool stuff, and he cleaned house, and then he did what he said he was going to do, put me on his shoulders, did the sit out, boom, hit with that, then he got the 1, 2, 3, and we went to the back, and I was like, sir, thank you so much. Like, at this point, I didn't realize you're supposed to ask for advice, but I said, were you happy with anything I did, or were you mad about it? And he said, no, kid, you worked hard, and he's like, I like that you gave some input. And I was like, oh, okay, good, because I wasn't sure, like, if I was allowed to speak up, or that would be looked down upon if I did, and, like, I just figured, like, if you asked me, I did have a couple moves I wanted to try. He's like, no, good for you, man. He's like, you should always put your stuff in if you got a chance. Like, you're just as much part of the match as everybody else. Then I made the legal mistake. I said, hey, sir, thank you so much. Like, and then I told him my whole story. I've always looked up to you. You were my favorite character on the video game. I always loved when you came up with the cool moves and stuff like that. And I was like, it'd be so cool if you like mention I didn't even say myself. I said if you mention PWA in your blog. I'm like, everybody loves that blog. And he was like, kid, don't push your luck. And then I was like, oh, sorry. And then I felt like such an ass to leave on, like, not bad terms. It wasn't bad terms, but it was just like, I thought I had a good impression made on him, and then I said that, and I think I like ruined it. But that was always a feather in my cap, and rest in peace to Chris Kanyon. I loved reading his book. It's so sad what happened. He was one of the greatest wrestlers ever, in my opinion, as far as just his style. He was doing stuff that they're doing now, coming up with all these moves way before anyone else. And he was in a cruiserweight, and like he was just way ahead of the game. And I always had a lot of respect and love for him. And to me, that will always go down in history as one of my favorite matches of all time. And I just was happy that I got chosen for the spot. I guess Ruffy really pushed for me because he was doing the Newmarket thing, and I guess he just liked me, and I just was really honored to get that match and to be able to perform, maybe not like 5 stars or anything like that, but I didn't screw up and I held my own, and man, I felt like $1 million after that day, and that will always have a special place on my heart. And remember, if anyone remembers this match, I know Gordo might and Cutthroat might, anyone else that was there, I don't know, there was probably like 100, 150 fans there. But remember, like, or you get a leg drop, comment, or you get a clothesline, subscribe, or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling, Cuba.